Speaker Nancy Pelosi announcing that the House is going to vote on that resolution to curb President Trump's military powers on Iran in the wake of the American strike that killed a top Iranian general. Now, this comes as the administration is facing backlash from Republicans following a briefing on the strike, with Senator Mike Lee of Utah calling it the worst he's ever been part of. Mohamed, I want you to take a listen to this, and then we have a follow-up question for you.
What I found so distressing about that briefing was that one of the messages we received from the briefers was, do not debate, do not discuss the issue of the appropriateness of further military intervention against Iran. And that if you do, you'll be emboldening Iran. The implication being that we would somehow be making America less safe by having a debate or a discussion about the appropriateness of further military involvement against the government of Iran. Now, I find this insulting and demeaning, not personally, but to the office that each of the 100 senators in this building happens to hold.
We want to mention to you that Pelosi is going to speak at 10:45 Eastern. We're going to bring you any headlines from that as it emerges. But Mohamed, when you see this kind of back and forth and discord in Washington, and then you look at what potentially could be a geopolitical event that does really impact global growth, what should I as an investor, what should we be looking at coming from D.C. as we make these decisions?
So let me tell you what the market will do. The market will ignore what's going on in D.C. Just as it has ignored the impeachment process, just as it has ignored the Mueller report, the market is basically saying as long as central banks are supportive, that's what matters. And setting aside all these other things. And it speaks to the disconnect. The disconnect is not just between economists and market participants that we talked about earlier. Is between economists on the one side, and on the other hand, you have market participants, political science, and international relations experts. They are much more cautious about what's going on, but the markets are repeating the same game plan that has worked really well. Bet on liquidity, and it will power through all these uncertainties.
But isn't that liquidity, Mohamed, this is Andy Serwer, isn't that liquidity sort of based on Jay Powell's take on things, which has increasingly become an international perspective, right? Which heretofore it hadn't been from the Fed.
Absolutely right, Andy. I mean, I keep on cautioning, be careful that you cannot bet on liquidity long term. Yes, the Fed did a dramatic 180 a year ago. Yes, the Fed led other central banks to also follow it in policy loosening. But you can't repeat it over and over again. And meanwhile, the uncertainties are piling up. So if you're a tactical investor, life is relatively easy. If you are a longer-term secular and structural investor, life is getting much more difficult. And the challenge for all of us is to navigate this growing tug of war between constructive short-term and, to use Ben Bernanke's phrase, an unusually uncertain medium term.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.